EIA process has several components. Number one of which is project screening. Why is there a need for a project to be screened? We need to screen the project because not all projects need to have an EIA. Why is it so? According to the EIA law, DAO 14, if the industrial process is not falling under two categories, what are these two categories? If it is considered as an ECP is environmental critical project. So how would you know whether it's an environmental critical project? EIA law itself has enumerated all the different projects that are classified under this category. An example of this would be mining process. So it's an environmental critical project. What else? If you want to come up with a dam, so it's also an environmental critical project. The size of the project would also classify it as an ECP, and therefore it needs to have an EIA. Now, another category for the project to have an EIA is that it belongs to an ECA. What is an ECA? Environmental Critical Area. So, even if it doesn't belong as an ECP, but your plant or the industrial process has to be built in an environmental critical area such as forests or an area wherein there is bird sanctuary, fish sanctuary, and the like, that is classified as an ECA. Okay. Now, what if after screening you realize that the project doesn't need an EIA? Does it mean we're not going to mitigate any more project? Remember, we have learned in the previous lectures that all industrial processes would entail waste, and therefore these waste and air emissions have to be mitigated. So, instead of preparing an EIA, what has to be prepared is an IEE. What's an IEE? Initial Environmental Examination. If you're going to check the EIA law, the EIA process is almost the same as IEE, but there are just some parts of the EIA that will be eliminated. In short, IEE is shorter than EIA. In the same manner, the project, after completion of the IEE and submission and approval, the project will also be given an ECC. But there are projects which would not fall under having an EIA as well as an IEE. These are projects which are small. Remember, we have to be sustainable. An EIA process is costly, tedious, and it would entail a lot of time. So, in order for us to be sustainable, and the project is just a small project, we don't need to do an EIA nor an IEE. So, a shorter process of mitigating the negative impacts or the adverse measures has to be done. And what is that process? It's actually the submission only of project description. So it is not as simple as just describing the project, but if you're going to check your EIA law, there are also some parts of this report. But relative to an EIA as well as an IEE, project description is the shortest. Now, the project, if it falls under this category, the project description submission, will not be given an ECC, but rather will be given a document which we call CNC, Certificate of Non-Coverage. Okay, now going back to the process, after scoping, what we need to do is prepare the report. So we'll discuss later the different components of the report. Now, assuming that you have prepared already the report must be evaluated by the government, the DNR. The DNR EMB, as mentioned a while ago, will be hiring EIA reviewer. So these are actually experts on the different field. So let's say you're putting up a mining company or a mining plant, they have to get someone that is an expert of mining. So normally, they get from the academic. So in our case, in Mapua, our Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Doma, is actually an EIA reviewer. Now, I cannot be an EIA reviewer because I am an EIA preparer. There will be a conflict of interest. So the DNR EMB has to get a non-biased EIA reviewer. Now, after your EIA has been reviewed, you have two possible fate. So one is to be issued an ECC, or it will be denied. If the EIA will be denied and no ECC that will be released, you have to change the project or you have to relocate the project. Now, assuming you have a positive result, you'll be issued an ECC. Please take note that in order to avoid bureaucracy or red tape or corruption in DNR, the EIA law has been modified that upon submission of your report or the EIS for 30 to 60 days and the government has not given a result on your application, automatically the company will get an ECC. So upon the modification of the EIA law, it is now a practice that all ECC will be released upon submission within 30 to 60 days. Okay, take note from the figure that upon issuance of ECC, in the event that the company would like to do an expansion, there should be another application that has to be done. So, expansion and project modification needs an approval from the DNR as well. Now, take note also that even if the ECC has been released, there should be an environmental impact monitoring and evaluation audit. So this will be explained on how we prepare the EIS later. Okay, after screening, another scope of EIA is scoping. So what is scoping? This is the process where you get data. Now what kind of data do you get? You get primary data and secondary data. Now, what are considered to be primary data? These are the information that you get from laboratory analysis. So that means you have to get water samples as well as air samples to determine the water quality and the air quality. So as mentioned in the introduction, you need to come up with a baseline study. So the primary data can be taken before and after the process or the industrial process has been established. Now, how do you get the secondary data? Secondary data may be taken from interviews, ocular inspection or site inspection. So that's why when I do my EIA or I conduct my EIA with a team, I normally ask the proponent to give us 2 to 3, 1 or 2, or at most 3 visits for the site inspection. Now, this table shows you different ways on how to conduct scoping. So, you can have, as mentioned, you can have field trips and site visits. You can also have public meetings. Now, scoping in terms of public meetings is the most commonly method used in order to get data. So what do you do in the public meeting is you invite as many stakeholders as possible. Now, who are the stakeholders? You remember that if this is your plant, you have to identify the different impact zones. So in primary impact zone, these would involve communities around the plant. However, as we have mentioned or as we have reiterated, we have to get as far as not only the primary impact zone, but also the secondary impact zone, and if possible, up to the tertiary impact zone. So that means as many stakeholders that are or who are located in the primary and secondary as well as tertiary impact zones must be invited in the public meetings. Now, who are examples of these stakeholders? So, most of the industrial processes are located near the rivers or the lakes, primarily because, as we have discussed in water topic, this is their way on how to discharge their wastewater. So they discharge their effluent to the river or to the lake near them. And therefore, the stakeholders that would be affected would include the fishermen. So you have to ensure to these fishermen that the water quality will not be affected. Now, who else? In the event that your industrial plant that will be constructed will be located near or within the agricultural lands, you have also to invite farmers. So they will be included in the list of stakeholders. How about competitors? The same industry as yours. Yes, as long as they are located within the 3 different impact zones. You can also invite communities. Normally, in this public meeting, communities are the ones who are actively participating because they ask, some of the frequently asked questions would include, where will you get the water that you will use in the plant? Where will you get your energy source that you will use in the plant? Because you are considered, or the plant is considered as a competitor for these resources.